Welcome to the Fix Your Sciatica podcast, where we meet with experts and clients and discuss how to manage your sciatica and low back pain without the use of medications or surgery. I'm your host, Dr. Ashleigh Mack, and I'm a physical therapist as well as the founder of ifixyoursciatica.com, a go-to resource for pain management.
Oftentimes, people have challenges trying to start off with a program, whether it be working with me or working with another practitioner, and pushing it back because they are going to go through some travels. And the travels means that they're going to be leaving their home base, and it can be really challenging trying to stick with a program or even start a program. Today's guests are two folks who I highly respect and I'm a huge fan of, and they live the nomadic lifestyle. And I thought that they would be a great couple to talk about when it comes to traveling and not being close to a home base in which you are well established. So on today's podcast, I have both Trey and Ashleigh Hall, two amazing fitness professionals who live the nomadic lifestyle. And we're going to talk all about how to stay well and healthy, even when you're dealing with pain when you're out on the road. So Ashleigh and Trey, it's so good seeing you. How you doing today?
Great. Doing so good. So good to see you, man.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having us on, Ashleigh.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the pleasure is all mine. I mean, I respect everything that you've done, even when the first time we met, but being able to go out on the road and travel the country and even the world, I mean, that is something that people dream of. And you two are living that dream starting this year. So congratulations on all of that. For the listeners who haven't heard of you yet, tell us a little bit about yourselves and what kind of led you to this point.
Yeah, so we opened our gym. We had a physical location that we opened in 2016, and we loved it. That was the dream at the time. And we owned it for a few years, and then COVID happened. We had to shut down. During the 7 weeks that we were closed, we had to go remote. So we were able to retain about 94% of our clientele by shifting to an online coaching model. And we realized that we loved that so much more than owning a physical location.
I think not only just for us, but also for the clients that we had at the time too, it was nice to be able to have your own schedule and be able to move wherever you were versus having to spend the time to commuting to the location that you needed to go to for your sessions. And then also it just like for us, it made us go outside more. So that's where kind of the nomad life came in, that we wanted to explore this beautiful world we live in. And
we were kind of inspired at that same time to start looking into like the nomadic lifestyle because her sister, Ashleigh's sister, had just moved into an RV to travel around the country for her husband's job. That her and her family, her 3 young kids, they're all under 4 at the time.
They're amazing.
Moved into a 32-foot travel trailer and traveled up to Idaho and Texas and a few other places. And we hadn't ever really considered that as a possibility before that point. And seeing that, we realized that we could do these 2 things that we really enjoyed, traveling and training people remotely. And so that kind of started everything for us. We started working towards selling our gym, getting processes together for that. And in January 2022, we actually finally sold our gym. So we've been living on the road kind of part-time since then. About half the year we've spent on the road. And the rest of the time we've been still living in the RV, but closer to home.
That's so cool. Sorry, go ahead, Ashleigh.
No, I just wanted to say we wrapped that up. But
I love it. It's so great. It's so cool. And I think especially nowadays when the world is opening up or the world is open and like businesses are open, you can go to brick and mortar gyms. I look and reflect on like, what did I take away from, say, like working out in my own home or like taking care of myself on my own time? And one of the coolest things that I loved especially if I'm working with someone online, is the fact that I didn't necessarily need to be in a specific location at a specific time. So being able to offer that flexibility, which you couldn't necessarily afford to do back before all this stuff had evolved, because it was like, that if you're going to go to the gym, you're going to go to the gym at a specific time, you're going to work out, you're going to go home. And the same thing when you're working with a physical therapist or a healthcare practitioner, you're like, that you have a designated time you have to go, you have to wait for your practitioner, and then you get treatment, and then you drive home, and whether or not, regardless of how long that drive is. And so that ability to have in a way that nomadic lifestyle, or like work with someone online like you two and like us, you have that convenience to be able to do it in the comfort of your own home or wherever you're located, and you don't have to necessarily worry about having a long commute. In some cases, you might not necessarily be in the mood to talk to a whole bunch of people. And so being able to like do it on your own time in your own environment is really key. So I really respect that. And I love the fact that you two have been able to jump on that and capitalize on how you can help people. And so this nomadic lifestyle, I think a lot of people think, all right, you gotta be consistently traveling all the time, but you said you've been doing it part-time. And a lot of people might have the sentiment, well, I want to be able to have my home base, but I just travel a lot. And so people see this as a huge obstacle from being able to commit themselves to some sort of routine, or even some sort of person who's going to guide them, a coach such as yourself. And the truth is, that's a big myth. And from your end, with the clients that you work with, why do you think this is a myth? Why do you think the myth of the fact that like if you don't have a specific home base that you can't commit to something? Why do you think that exists?
I think it's one of those things that we have a hard time kind of accepting that enough is enough. That a lot of times it's that we think that we have to do the perfect thing in order for us to see progress. And I run into that a lot with people, is that they don't really consider the other possibilities that are out there whenever we start talking about fitness and nutrition and starting to maybe work some things into their lives, that they only see the very best thing that they could do and see where they currently are and don't see any way to get to that point.
Yeah. And I think that there's also just a majority of the conversation is around physical locations as well. Just because it is very close to us, right? Like that's proximity factor. But online can be even closer because it's right there where you need it. So I think it's just hard to kind of draw that line, that connection between those two things.
Yeah, I mean, for example, we've got 250 square feet total. That's all the space that we have to live in. Our area that we have to exercise in is only like 30 square feet. So if we're not able to get outside for some reason, and there's been lots of days that we've not been able to get outdoors because of windstorms or rainstorms or, whatever, that was our workout space. And it's not necessarily ideal, but it works. And we're still able to get strong, or at least retain our strength and get fitter using the space that we have.
Absolutely.
I think part of it is also that it's not as easy, that you definitely have to be deliberate about making a choice whenever things are not as you don't have the same number of options or equipment or the same people around you, that it's then all on you to make the decision to do that, unless you have someone who's like calling you and saying like, hey, you need to get up and do this workout right now. But it definitely takes a lot more effort on an individual, on an individual's part sometimes. But even then, that can still be freeing, because now it's like, what's stopping me from getting this done? That my workout space is 3 feet away. Like, if I really need to, I can stop during the middle of the workday and do a few squats or do a couple sets of floor press or something. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated to be effective. I think that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Those are the same thoughts I have as well.
We are going to take a quick break to tell you about our awesome new program called the Sciatica Protocol. If you don't have the time to see a professional, but are tired of trying to figure out this recovery on your own, then the Sciatica Protocol is for you. Harness the power of a knowledgeable physical therapist through your phone. It takes no more than 7 minutes per day, and it is designed to help you recover as quickly as possible. It is simple to start, and all you need to do is log into ifixyoursciatica.com/the-sciatica-protocol and fill out the 9-question quiz to begin. The link for the program is in today's show notes.
If you didn't know, listeners, you're a couple, you're married, right? So it's like you two share a very similar vibe, and I feel it even just talking with you two right now, and it's fantastic. So I just had to say that up. But I do have to say, like, what you two, the first point that you talked about was about this like concept of like perfection and progress. And I wrote in my notes, I was like, perfection does not necessarily doesn't equal progress. And I think what's challenging is the fact that when us as humans, for the majority of us, we love to operate under the best conditions. And so oftentimes the best conditions means that we have the time, we have the energy, and then we also have the willpower to be able to go to a facility. And when you are going to a facility, the conditions need to be perfect. Like the moment that a disruption happens in your life, it's just another obstacle preventing you from going to that specific location. And what's really cool about, say, if you are traveling or if you are traveling and you're working with someone who's online, like Trey and Ashleigh, and even myself, working on the online capacity actually removes a lot of those rooms for error in those conditions where it doesn't mean perfect, and which means that we can still continue to progress. And I think when it comes to the concept of wellness, fitness, or even pain management, the human mind, and we'll just say like the American society's mind, it's like you're either fit or you're not. But fitness and wellness and even pain management it's a spectrum. Being able to sit, and all we're trying to do is get better one step at a time. And if you're listening right now and you're in an active state of pain, if you're an 8 out of 10 pain, yes, it would be so amazing for your pain to go down to a 0 in the blink of an eye. But in most cases, you're going to do a stretch, you're going to reevaluate. If it makes you feel better, it might bring you down to a 6. And although it's not bringing you down to 0, you are making some progress. And the cool thing is that you can do it in the comfort of your own home. And the same thing when it comes to the fitness and wellness standpoint. Another big thing that I think that a lot of people overlook is this concept of when you're doing this stuff, like you're the person, the person who's exercising, the person who's moving, the person who's on the receiving end of Trey and Ashleigh's services, or even mine. Like you have to put the work in to get the results, and it's really on you. And in some cases, when I get people to a certain point, and I don't know if you experience this, you too, but there's some cases where I make people feel so great, and then I'll just say, they're like, Ashleigh, thank you so much for your help, and I'll just tell them I'm just a glorified cheerleader, and so much respect to cheerleaders because I think they do a great job. But I think in essence, it's like whenever we're trying to improve someone's lives, they have to do some of the work on their own, if not all of the work on their own, and we're there to just guide them. So much respect on that.
Oh, 100%. It's kind of like a Donald Miller story brand, how he says that, we're the guide, you're the hero. Like right. That's kind of the entire thing here, is that we're trying to help people see that they are strong enough, they are capable, they already have all the tools that they really need. It's just us helping them see that and just help them see kind of the possibilities there. So that's kind of, that's 100% how I see it, man.
And I think based on your social media, are you guys Star Wars fans? Is that what I saw? Or maybe? Or am I reading something?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you are?
So
okay.
much so.
Yeah. We're the Obi-Wan Kenobis. We're the guides being able to say, like, you got to take this next step. Like, only you can take it, which is huge. And so,
exactly.
If we're talking about living the nomadic lifestyle or just being outside of your home base, what would you say are some of your go-to strategies to just make things a lot easier, to just do something, whether it be like, doing their exercises, doing their stretches? For you to, like, your space, as you said, it's like a 30-foot square space. You can have, it's right there, right? So if we don't necessarily have to make that drive, but there's still a lot of obstacles in our way. So how do you two make it easy for yourselves to keep up with the program?
Well, I know one thing is having a plan. So a strategy, whether that's for us, when we're on the road, if we have something that we already have written up, ready to go, that just removes that barrier of us having to try to figure it out in the moment. And that's the same thing with, hiring someone like you as well, like having something that's already there, ready to go. And now there are some other people that are nomads that are able to put themselves closer to fitness facilities that have like structured classes. Maybe that's a way that you go about doing it. But for people like us, we can't. We don't have as much of that luxury. So having a plan that's written and ready to go definitely removes that barrier.
Yeah, there was a good 6 weeks straight that we were traveling around that we were anywhere close to a 24-hour gym or anything that had classes at all. So anything that we were going to do, we had to do in place.
Yes.
Things that we do whenever we first get somewhere is that we want to get out and kind of like survey what's around us. Ashleigh is like the planner, and so whenever she's like booking somewhere, she's already often like looking what's nearby, if there's any trails or what access we have, if maybe there would be. Sometimes the facilities might have like an actual like small gym there. Typically it's just going to be like really cheap cardio equipment. It hasn't been maintained in 10 years, but whatever. But anyway, she'll scout around, see kind of what's around, and then once we actually get there, we'll take a walk around the campground and maybe down the road a little bit, kind of just get our bearings, kind of see what opportunities are around. We've used a lot of playgrounds, monkey bars and things like that to do pull-ups and rows, swing sets. Even we're able to do pull-ups and rows off of swing sets and use that for some variation. So that's also part of it, is finding opportunities that already exist rather than trying to just see what you have like currently available to you and going from there.
Another thing that we've talked about is like establishing your minimum. What is the minimum that you are going to do day to day that you could maintain? So for us, that's just going for a walk in the middle of our day. That may not look like actually doing our planned program, but typically us doing that minimum actually makes us want to do the plan that we have already. So just having something that you're going to be able to do that gets you moving. Typically that movement is what makes us ready for that next phase. You
had mentioned that you see fitness as kind of like on a spectrum, that there's like, or pain, even as on the spectrum, that there's 0 to 10 or whatever. I like to see it as like on a dial, that you turn that dial up or down, and that can be dynamic. It's based on what is available to you day to day. And I kind of see as like 5, the middle section on that dial, as being what you think you can maintain with just a little bit of effort, right? And then you can turn that down if it's just like, I really don't even have that much available today. And then 1 would be like the very least that you could do. And, for like nutrition, that might be literally just drinking water, making sure you drink some water that day. For exercise, it might be going for a walk, but, depending on where you are, maybe that needs to change to something that's more like, I'm just going to make sure I get 5 minutes of deliberate movement today, whether that's stretching or I'm going to do some squats and some lunges, something like that. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be effective. If it's consistent, that's where the magic is.
And I think our last main strategy is just knowing why we want to do something. That if you can stay connected to that, that's going to be your motivator. What's the reasoning? How is this going to make your life better by doing it?
And how does it affect you when you do it?
Yeah.
Like, what feelings do you get from doing this thing? Not just like, in 10 years, if I keep doing this thing, like my cholesterol is going to be lower. I'm going to avoid heart disease. I'm going to avoid diabetes. It's like, you don't see those things as happening to yourself. That's happening to someone else that you don't even know. He doesn't even matter. Like, you got to put it in terms that make sense to you right now or in the next 10 minutes. Otherwise, most of us aren't wired to think that long term.
Wow. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 key points, which I think are really important, super impactful. I want to take a step back and talk about planning. I think
everyone hears, oh, you got to plan. Planning is so important. And so this is when it comes to formulating a plan. How do you formulate a plan for yourself, or like how should someone try to formulate a plan to like solve something?
So Ashleigh is the big planner. Ashleigh, what do you look for?
I myself, whenever I'm planning, I try to look for things that match the level of energy that I have. That's typically going to be a plan that I'm going to follow. And then whenever I go to planning, like the implementation, it's also around things that typically I'm already doing. So trying to attach that activity to a habit that I already do makes planning so much easier. And so I think those are like the two main things. It's like, is it a plan? Is the plan that I'm choosing going to be something I'm going to do? And then how do I implement that plan? It's by finding a habit that I'm already doing.
Yeah. So you're using something as a trigger. That often works really, really well for us. For whenever I'm like coming up with workouts or whatever, I'm talking with someone about exercise and, you know, being consistent with that. And they ask like, what are the things that I need to be doing? It's like, it doesn't have to be all that complicated. I'm going to list off a few things and maybe that sounds complicated, but it's really fairly basic. It's like, as long as you're doing some of the basic movements, you're squatting, you're doing some push and pulls, you're moving your own body through space. So whether that's a loaded carry or you're running or walking, and you're doing something at high intensity for a short amount of time, and also doing some really low intensity for a longer time, you're going to be pretty fit overall. And, you know, that's sometimes pretty hard for people to understand that it doesn't have to be the most complex thing in the world in order to be effective. And the same way goes, you know, same thing for any of the other plans that you might come up with.
Yeah, I think complexity is cool because it's nice and shiny. But I think, well, it's interesting. It's kind of like what we find is like the most like stable structures are like the most simple, because the more variables, the more complex, the shinier we try to make it, the more opportunities there are for it to break and for it to fail. And so I love the fact that you're saying it doesn't have to be complex. It could be simple. And I think what a lot of people see is that simplicity is kind of like they perceive it as not valuable and not effective. But that's kind of like the exact thing. You look at all of the masters out there, any master in their craft, what you're going to notice is that they do these simple things like really well. And in the CrossFit world, they called it virtuosity, right? Virtuosity, right. Doing the common things uncommonly well, because you don't always necessarily need to do all the crazy things. And when I hear the word planning, not only are we looking at trying to simplify and how we can integrate it, but also for you listeners, I'm a huge fan of being able to set the intention and the goal of what you're trying to accomplish. Because if you don't necessarily have a direction of what you're trying to get done, then you can be doing all of these different things, but we won't necessarily be able to figure out whether or not those interventions or exercises or anything that you're doing is truly helping. And it's really hard to actually come up with a plan by yourself, which is why we have coaches, which is why we have professionals out there to be able to say, here's a third party perspective, because when we're trying to create things for ourselves, we have our own emotions, we have our own biases, we have our own beliefs that will actually limit our ability to be able to create a good structured plan. And Trey and Ashleigh are doing a fantastic job being able to say, if you simplify it, it's going to be a lot easier to implement, and especially being able to put that into your day. And Ashleigh, I love the fact that I think you said trying to find opportunities to be able to weave that in versus knocking out things out of your regular day to just like put this in. And the reality is that we all have 24 hours in the day. And for me, if I'm telling someone to go who's going through a pain movement program, it's like to give them 4 hours of exercise a day. That's just really unrealistic, right? And so being able to do it and fit into your day as much as possible. So I think that's really beneficial. And I'm so thank you for sharing that. And so let's talk about a big part of the nomadic lifestyle. It's like being out on the road. So would it be safe to assume that you two spend a fair amount of time driving?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We drove all the way out to, well, the first 3 months that we did out, we went all the way out to Arizona, Zion area actually, and then we drove all the way back. So and all of that towing.
And that was from Missouri. So
yes.
Something like 1,800 miles.
Wow.
One way. Yeah. So the things that we do about towing days though is that we really try to limit it as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So I tow. Ashleigh is my support team whenever I'm towing.
I'm the cheerleader in the passenger seat.
She is. There's only so much capacity I have to continue to be an alert and responsible driver. That makes me sound like a really terrible driver, but it's like you have a limit. But I try to keep my drive days to about 3 to 4 hours. My tow days to about 3 to 4 hours. So,
and then even then, we still like to take breaks because, you're going to mention that you're sitting for a very long time, and that's probably typically how long we like to sit and work too. That every 2 to 3 hours, we like to make sure we get up and we go move. Even sometimes more than that, but definitely on drive days, we stop at least 1 to 2 times to get up, just go walk.
Yeah. Get moving again.
Yes.
It's really not so much that positions themselves are bad for you. It's the time that you spend in them. And then what you do to like break that up. And so our thing is that we try to get moving again. We go for short little walks whenever we stop. And then once we stop for the day, whether we're at our campsite or if we're in a Walmart parking lot, we'll get out and walk around once we're done setting up as much as we need to.
Yeah. Get familiar with the area and just make sure that we're feeling good, because setting up takes a lot out of you too. So it just helps, like it feels like you're giving back to yourself whenever you do that.
Yeah. Another thing that we try to make sure we do is we try to make sure we drink plenty of water on days that we're traveling. It might mean that you have to stop one more time, but in 2 or 3 hours, probably isn't going to be that big of a deal. But I find that I just feel much better if I'm very deliberate about drinking at least, one Yeti tumbler full of water on the drive there or more, and then continue to drink as we get there. We also try to make an effort to not just sit once we get wherever we're going. That Ashleigh mentioned that, we're getting up, we're walking around, but we also make an effort to not just get back to the RV and then just wait until the next day.
I appreciate the first big thing, which was like get up and move often. I know for myself and my wife, we're naturally fidgety people. I myself more so than my wife, but I know that for me, it's like I'm sitting there 20 minutes. I'm ready to get up and jump out of my skin. And so what about you guys? Are you the kind of people who it's like, okay, my body is like saying I need to get moving? Or are you someone where it's like your brain really needs to tell you to get up and move? What's that like?
I'd say I probably fidget more than Ashleigh does. That sometimes I'll be like shaking my leg and she'll ask me to stop because it's shaking the RV. So I tend to fidget a lot more, but Ashleigh's very deliberate about getting up and doing stuff.
If I'm not, then that's where that brain piece comes into play, that I tend to work through that sensation. And so typically I do like to set an alarm that every 20 to 30 minutes I get up and I go do something.
And it doesn't have to be something crazy. Like sometimes it's literally getting up and washing some dishes or folding some laundry or something.
Yeah, but some type of movement. So
it's just something to break up the monotony seems to help her a lot.
I love the addition of the alarm. I think it's really easy for us override those signals that we get from our body to say move. That's actually one of the many really cool things that separates us from the animals. But like one of the big things is that our gray matter, our human brain, can really bypass a lot of the signals that our brainstem and our brainstem and our midbrain to actually say like get up and move. And the cool thing is that we are able to truly override those signals, and that allows us to push human performance. It allows us to drive human innovation. But in some cases, it leads us to the point where we can be stuck. And I know for me, living a life of fitness, like if I go 2 days of not like moving or exercising, like I'm pretty antsy. But there's a couple of times when I've gotten like pretty sick where I haven't really moved a lot. And then just trying to get moving is just so hard. And so for you to be able to set that alarm clock is huge. I try to tell people that and they laugh at me because they're like, Ashleigh, I'm not going to do that. But I'm so glad that you do that, Ashleigh, because I can say I know someone who actually sets an alarm clock to tell them to get up. And
I like it to be fairly gentle when I do that. And typically I don't have the normal alarm clock that I use to like wake up in the morning. That it's like just vibrate or like a nice smooth sound. And I set it across the room because if I have it right beside me, I will also find like if someone's tried it before, they might just easily hit that like snooze or go through it. But if you set it across the room, you're already up. So you might as well go ahead and take that break. So that helps too.
That's a great idea. That's huge. And what's really cool is that nowadays there are some wearables out there that will actually have a reminder. I know my wife actually wears an Oura ring, which tracks her sleep, and she'll actually get notifications on her phone being like, might be a great time to get up and walk around a little bit. So that's really cool. And I think Apple Watch does that too.
Yes.
Let's talk about water. You brought up like you're drinking a Yeti tumbler, which I love my Yetis. And so you're out on the road, and I know that whenever I travel, it's always really interesting to try to find like the different water sources. And so I remember, Hoboken, New Jersey, which is where I lived before living out here in California, didn't have the best water, but New York City actually has fantastic water coming from the tap, which came directly from the Catskills. It was consistently cold and it was awesome. And then moving out here to California, we're kind of in a perpetual drought. So like water drinking is a little bit more challenging, but I'm also really focused on sustainability. So I'm not generating so much trash. And luckily we have a water filter attached to our fridge, so I'm able to drink a lot of water that way. But for you guys, because you're out moving around, what are some of your go-to strategies on like staying hydrated and like putting decent liquid in your body?
We do have a filter. So we've got a filter going into the RV, and then we have like a separate Brita filter. We just use a Brita. We don't need a Berkey or whatever. So we have our Brita filter for our drinking water.
And typically on travel days, we'll fill the Brita because we're not going to have water on board typically unless we want to fill our tanks that we have on here. And so that way we don't have to worry about the extra weight in the vehicle, but we still do have water on hand for the day as we're traveling.
So that's typically our strategy because we try not to have too much waste either.
Yes.
You're muted.
Thanks for reminding me. I get so excited and I forgot to unmute myself. But yeah, sustainability is huge. Especially like I didn't realize until I came out to California. And what's cool is we have a compost bin, a recycle bin, and a garbage bin, and it's great. And so, all right, so water, huge. It's important to stay hydrated. Also, it's a great way. You drink enough water, you get up every hour or so to go pee, because it's like a good normal human process, which is really great. And so we talked about setting reminders, getting up and moving, staying hydrated. Let's talk about some essentials that or things or even just like general practices that you do that keep you healthy when you are having like those big travel days.
So we can talk about like equipment first.
Cool.
So when we first like started planning this, we're like, yeah, we're going to get a short barbell and we're going to take plates with us everywhere. And I don't know, it still seems like a cool idea, but the reality is that would have been a huge pain in the butt.
And we do have to watch weight for towing for those that know. But
I mean, we've got plenty of room in our payload for both the trailer and the truck, but it still would have been just one more thing that we would have had to worry about. So what we have is adjustable dumbbells. That is the majority of what we use for resistance training. So we've got a couple of Bowflex adjustable dumbbells. They go from 5 pounds to 52.5 pounds each. And that's enough to get a really good workout in for pretty much anything. That, yeah, you're limited on how heavy you can really go. But if you slow it down, if you do some pauses, if you just change up your stance, you'll still challenge yourself a lot. If we really want to add more resistance to it, we also have some of those big loop resistance bands that look like giant rubber bands. And so maybe we'll hold on to one of those as we're holding on the dumbbells as well. So we'll just double up on resistance there. Sometimes we'll just use the resistance bands on their own just to have, you know, a little bit of a change of pace. It gives us some variety, and you know, it's nice to keep things fun and interesting sometimes. We've got jump ropes and yoga mat, and I think that's pretty much it for like actual equipment.
We have a pair of gymnastics rings, but we can't really use them at the moment. We used to have a truck that had a rack on it. We just attached them, but we can do what we need to with what we've got. But yes, having equipment for variety is one way that like we use that to stay well. I know we've already mentioned hydration, our efforts in there. With food, we just, on travel days, typically we try to make something for ourselves before we hit the road. And then whenever we get there, we go grocery shopping pretty much that same day that we get set up, so that we're ready and we have as much food as we can for like about a week is how much our small fridge can hold. And we like to plan that so that we're not going to be eating out a lot. One, for just having more like a wide variety of nutrients that's available, but then also for expenses as well, just not eating out all the time. And so, yeah, that's something that we typically try to focus on when we get set in is what does the food look like for the next week?
Yeah. And even when I was younger, I installed furniture into college dorms. And I don't mean like I was helping kids move in. It was the colleges would hire us to unload 53-foot trailers full from floor to ceiling, front to back, full of furniture. And we'd unload 2 of those a day. That's not relevant to the rest of the story. Anyway, I spent a lot of time during those years living out of hotel rooms because we had to travel wherever the schools were. And even then, even though I only had a mini fridge and a small microwave, I'd still try to at least control some of the things I could eat, even though pizza pockets and pizza rolls made up a large part of my diet. I'd still try to get fresh fruits and vegetables because I just felt better whenever I included those in my diet, even if the rest of it didn't look quote unquote ideal. And that's kind of like going back to what we were talking about earlier, is that everything exists on a spectrum or on a dial. It's like, what are things that you can still control, you know, rather than going from your ideal, your perfect meal, your perfect day to, you just screw it, I can't do anything right, so I'm just not even going to try. I found that by at least incorporating some of those things that made me feel like that, I just overall felt better. And it seemed like, because it was a very physical job, seemed like I was able to keep up a little bit better than some of the guys who didn't do that.
Yeah. And then besides like the equipment and the nutrition piece, just keeping the space tidy, since we are in such a small space, having that already ready to go for ourselves makes it so much easier when we're getting ready to do our sessions, or when we're getting ready to cook or anything. Just making sure that you are ready for that, whatever that task is going to be. It makes you feel so much better whenever your space is ready to go.
It's huge. You don't want to see what my office looks like right now, especially when it comes to tidiness. But I 100% agree. I think it's huge, like especially being able to just like do whatever you can with what you have. I think that's one of the most important parts. I love adjustable dumbbells. Anything adjustable definitely reduces a lot from a weight perspective. And I live in a house right now. We have our own garage. And so when we moved here, I was like, oh, it'd be great to have our own set of barbells and dumbbells and stuff like that. And I was like, it sounds cool. It's a lot. It takes up a fair amount of space. And it's just a garage itself. But
One thing I'm also a huge fan of whenever I travel is carrying a lacrosse ball with me to do any sort of like soft tissue work. I would usually recommend a foam roller, but the reality is that like I haven't found too many collapsible foam rollers, and they do take up a fair amount of space. If you can take a lacrosse ball, that's great. And I often tell people if they are foam rolling and they happen to be a wine drinker, they can use their wine bottle actually as a foam roller, which I think is a really cool strategy. Do people really listen to me when I say that? I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's I always thought it was a great idea. Yeah.
We
And
do
so,
actually have a
yeah.
lacrosse ball and a foam roller. So
Amazing.
we didn't mention those
we
things.
do
So
have
we do
those
have
things.
both of those. That we have a basket that I roll all of our extra like blankets in, and then just set the foam roller in there too. So
Yeah.
Love it. It's like an art piece as well. And so,
yes.
Ashleigh, Trey, you two brought up this concept of trying to understand, like when it comes to the concept of trying to either stick with the plan or start with the plan, is trying to establish your why as to why you're doing these things, because it's really the why that is going to help us make the decisions. The reality is that as rational as we can be, as logical as we can be, the majority of our decisions are actually made on emotion. And so the reason as to why we do this. And so I want to ask you two a personal question. Like, why is it so important for you two to be healthy and moving around?
I feel better overall when I do. That's probably one of like the biggest ones for me. I One of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing now is that I just absolutely love being outdoors. If you saw my skin complexion, you probably wouldn't guess that because I'm so pale. But the sun doesn't like me. I like it. It's unfair, but it is what it is. I really enjoy being outdoors, and it's one of those things that growing up, I'm from the Midwest, and we pretty much only kind of stuck in the Midwest, and so I didn't get to experience too much variety in that. But I always like really admired like looking at the mountains and seeing pine trees and I don't know, cool stuff like that. And being able to do that now has been just an absolute dream come true for me.
Yeah. So obviously mine's along the same lines. That I want to stay active and mobile, to be able to seek and do the adventures that I'd like to do comfortably. And sometimes that doesn't mean like comfortably as in it's not going to be hard at some points.
But you won't die.
Exactly. But just that I will enjoy myself, even if that's me pushing beyond my limits. And so, yeah, that's really why we like to stay active and mobile.
Yeah. So kind of along the same lines is like in next year, I plan on hiking the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim. So from South Rim to North Rim and then back again. It'll be something like 48 miles and 11,000 feet of elevation change. It's going to be really, really, really hard because I'm going to try to do it in under a day. It's definitely something that you don't just get up and do one day. So that's also kind of like keeping me motivated to make sure that I do my endurance work and my cardio stuff, because otherwise that's the easiest thing to brush off. But I'd like that to be an experience that I love and enjoy and cherish and maybe want to repeat. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
So you're staying healthy to do all the things, and I love that. I didn't start liking the great outdoors until I moved out here to California. I was a very soft city boy, and now I love nature, and it's great. I'm very much in my element. So when it comes to like being healthy and fit, Ashleigh, if you don't mind, you experienced a bout of some sciatica pain this year, and you had the opportunity to try out the protocol. So I'd love to, if you're interested, love to have you tell the audience, what you went through and what the protocol was like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to tell that story. So at the beginning of the year, we went out on our 3-month travels, and we were very, very active. And then we got back and we kind of settled in back home for a little bit, and I wasn't moving nearly as much, and I started to experience sciatic pain. And we had relations with you, Ashleigh, and Trey I had talked to him about it and voiced my concerns about it as well, because I hadn't really experienced anything like it before. And so he's like, hey, well, you should reach out to Ashleigh and start his program. And so he went ahead and signed up for me, which was also wonderful because I just removed that barrier as well. So what I really loved about the program getting into it is that it was very simple for me to sign up for it and to get that started, because you sent texts every day, which was wonderful as well, because I know what I should be doing. I was very familiar with the movements, but having someone to keep you accountable is what really helps you to push along, because you're doing that consistently. Consistency is the key to progress. Even if it's just a little bit of something every day, even if I didn't get to do the whole protocol, I did as much of it as I could. So, and after, I think it was just a couple weeks after I'd started it, I was already feeling back to, 90% better. Yeah, exactly. So it was wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Trey, good work. That I would have done the same thing for my wife. My wife was experiencing some issues. I would just be like, I'm just going to book it myself. So right on. And I love to hear that, and I love to hear success stories. And so thank you for giving it a try and sharing with us your experience. And so, I mean, you two obviously know a lot about being healthy and fit, and know how to tie in being healthy and fit and feeling good when out on the road. So when people have overcome their battle with sciatica pain and they're like, yeah, I want to do all this traveling, but I don't want this pain to come back. So I got to get in touch with people like Trey and Ashleigh. Tell us a little bit more about what you guys do, your company, and how people can get in touch.
Yeah, so we run Trained for Adventure. We have a couple of different tracks within our company that we have kind of a private club where people can sign up, and they have access to 6 workouts a week that have different tracks within that. So each day there are 3 options for that workout. One being if you have basically the equipment that we have. So it's if you just have dumbbells and maybe a pull-up bar, maybe you don't, we give options for if you don't have that. And then another track that's for a gym option where you have all the equipment you might need. And then a base option is what we call it for people who are probably traveling or just simply don't have the equipment or the budget, or who knows, for any equipment yet. So that one uses mostly body weight and maybe like a loaded duffel bag or backpack or hiking bag. So that's kind of what we do. Within that, there's also a lot of resources built on helping people understand and get more familiar with concepts around good sleep and eating habits and stress management. It's not just about exercise. That we really follow kind of like that sleep, eat, move, manage system that Josh Martin developed for Two Brain Business. And we find that it really meshes well with what we're trying to get people to do, is that fitness is not just how you exercise. It's really how you live your life. And it's those small habits that all work together and add up to kind of create, the end product, your overall results there. So,
yeah. So besides the private members club, we also, for those that need a little bit more help or a little more guidance, or just would like someone to keep them accountable with their program, we have remote personal training as well that we offer. So those 2 options. But our primary goal is to help people build the fitness and strength they need to confidently go out and do those adventures that they maybe are already doing and they'd like to elevate them, or they want to pursue something new, that maybe they just don't feel like they are capable of doing that. But we're here to show you that you absolutely are, and that we are going to be your biggest cheerleaders behind going out and trying something new, whether that's you want to go try kayaking or hiking, or your first 14er, or maybe it's also just something like you want to be able to keep up with your kids. Like that might just be your adventure, right? Or you want to take them out on smaller adventures. So that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
I love it.
But you can, I didn't mention where you can find us. That would probably help, right?
You gotta find Trey and
Instagram.
Ashleigh.
Yeah, you gotta go search for a couple hours. No, you'll be able to find us easily. We're on Instagram.
At Train for Adventure.
Yes, we do a lot on there. And then we also have our website as well, trainforadventure.com. Both of those, we put out free resources all the time within relation to movement, nutrition. We also like to talk about the adventures that we've been on so we can prepare people for those if they'd like to do them. So this last year went to Zion. We did a lot of hikes there. If you guys would like to see some of those, we went to Arizona. We did some of the Grand Canyon. We did Colorado. So there's a whole bunch of different ones on there.
Did some sandboarding in Utah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We don't just do hiking. We both want to try and put ourselves out there into different adventurous sports. So you guys will see a lot of that and just reviews of us, how we did it. And then like a reflection so that you don't have to go through maybe some of the obstacles that we did whenever we did it for the first time. So
I love it. Listeners, my job and iFixYourSciatica.com's job is to get you out of pain so you can live the rest of your life. But the journey to your wellness does not end with me. It just begins, and you can find and work with people like Trey and Ashleigh because they're the ones who are the best geared to help you expand and see the world beyond you. If I do my job correctly, you're going to be seeing these folks much sooner than you think. So Trey and Ashleigh, thank you so much for your time. It's so good seeing you both.
Great seeing you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you got some help from today's podcast. And for more info, check us out at ifixyoursciatica.com. Have a fantastic and pain-free day. No patient-therapist relationship is formed by listening to this podcast. We are not providing medical advice, and all information should be confirmed by a medical provider.